such that no foe can best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear.
The combat in Space Marine 2 is intense and savage. It's a must-play for fans of action games and the Warhammer franchise. This game is fucking amazing. Space Marine 2, developed by Saber Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment, is the highly anticipated sequel to the cult classic Warhammer 40k Space Marine. Set in the grimdark Warhammer 40k universe, the game follows the superhuman Space Marine Titus as he faces humanity's worst enemies. In this review, we will explore the game's engaging combat, rich lore, and powerful visuals while assessing its contribution to the Warhammer video game side of the franchise. I know I'm a little bit late with this, however, I didn't really get much of a chance to play before traveling overseas recently, and I wanted to really immerse myself in this game without needing to severely break up my playing time. But to jump ahead a little bit, this game is fucking amazing. It has also been a long time since a game made me stop playing just to sit back for a moment and appreciate just how cool it is.
Guardsmen, honor your emperor! With great pleasure, my lord!
Alright, Battle Brothers, let us begin for the glory of the Emperor.
For the emperor!
The Warhammer 40k universe, crafted by Games Workshop, presents a grim and complex sci-fi landscape where humanity is perpetually engaged in a struggle for survival against aliens, heretics, and other terrifying creatures. Space Marine 2 immerses players once more in this harsh reality, continuing the saga of former Captain Titus, a once distinguished Ultramarine captain celebrated for his unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. This sequel expands upon the narrative of the original Space Marine, launched in 2011, where Titus battled the forces of chaos. In Space Marine 2, he faces a different menace, this time being the unyielding Tyranid alien swarm, along with various foes of the Imperium of Man, elevating the game's intensity and action to new heights. It is worth noting that while familiarity with the first Space Marine game can enhance your experience, it's not essential to grasp the events of the sequel. Additionally, a deep understanding of Warhammer 40k lore isn't necessary, as its story is largely self-contained. More importantly, the gameplay is engaging enough to captivate players, making it an excellent entry point for newcomers to the 40k universe. If not for anything else, just for how fucking cool this game and its gameplay is. The combat in Space Marine 2 is intense and savage, showcasing the might and skills of the Space Marines. Players take the role of Titus, utilizing legendary Warhammer 40k armaments such as the Chainsword and Bolter, alongside other heavy weaponry that vividly brings the lore's fierce battles to life. The melee combat in this game is striking, and I was impressed by the intricacy and consideration that went into it, as each melee weapon operates at varying speeds as well as inflicting different damage levels. Additionally, each weapon features unique combos, adding layers of complexity when determining the best approach to confront each scenario, complete with gruesome finishing moves that highlight the sheer physicality of the Space Marines. And by the way, they're fucking awesome. While ranged combat may not deliver the same levels of satisfaction due to the absence of brutal finishes and enemy types larger than Hormagaunts being able to take multiple bolter mags, it does, however, complement the close quarters engagements beautifully, with each weapon feeling unique and also powerful. In many encounters, players will find themselves seamlessly switching between ranged and melee combat to take down their enemies. The Tyranids, a species of hive-minded alien creatures, can provide a terrifying challenge. Players will face waves of Tyranids, from swarming gods all the way to the towering Carnifexes, each demanding different strategies. You have the ability to counter and dodge some enemy attacks, as well as deliver instant kill counters to smaller enemy variants and execute damage larger enemies in a counter system that's kinda like the Batman Arkham games. Now, where this really shines is that in order to regenerate your armor and stay alive is you have to do these counters, which means you will need to be in close range and can't just rely on ranged attack spam. However, close range fights is almost guaranteed, as when I say these foes will swarm you, I really do mean they will be swarming you. Space Marine 2 does use the swarm engine, where pretty much every enemy you see on screen is actually there and can be interacted with, mostly by shooting at, as opposed to other games where enemies on the horizon are just part of the background and not actually there. And larger Tyranid battles can feel like survival horror to an extent, with Titus overwhelmed by numbers and forced to rely on quick reflexes and smart weapon choices to survive. Then throw in boss battles spread throughout the game, and Space Marine 2 does well in keeping things interesting. The simplest way I can describe this is if you like the Gears of War trilogy, you will most likely enjoy Space Marine 2 regardless of if you're a 40k fan or not. And just when it starts to feel a little bit stale, there is a switch that happens, and I will get to that in a little bit. Space Marine 2 is separated into 3 different game modes, the first one being the campaign, the second is the operations mode, and third being the PvP multiplayer. First, let's start with the campaign, and bear with me here as there's a lot to take in and there's some spoilers here, but with that said, here is a very brief summary of the plot. Titus, now referred to as Black Shield Nullus, commands a Deathwatch kill team dispatched to the Residius system in response to a distress signal from the Adaptus Mechanicus on the jungle planet of Kadaku. Their transport is ambushed and destroyed by Tyranids, leaving Titus as the only survivor. Severely injured, he is rescued by the Ultramarines and undergoes a transformation into a Primus Space Marine. As in the previous game before, he was accused of heresy for being resistant to warp energy and utilizing tactics that were not Codex compliant.
The Codex Astartes does not support this action,
Resulting in his penance being to serve in the Deathwatch for a century while going on insanely dangerous suicide missions is just a normal Tuesday for them. So what, kind of like the Arbiter from Halo? Sort of? Assigned to the second company under Captain Severitus Akaran, Titus embarks on a mission to evacuate Mechanus personnel, including Archmagos Nozick. Following Nozick's death in a gunship crash, they uncover signs of Chaos involvement. Growing suspicious, Titus learns of Project Aurora, which Nozick managed is linked to a weapon powered by Chaos artifact he had previously destroyed in the first game, allegedly. Akaran, adhering to orders from Primarch Gillian, insists that the project must proceed. When Titus attempts to alert Lord Kalga, Astropath Neoma, who is under Chaos influence, accuses him of betrayal. After Neoma's death exposes the presence of a 1,000-sun sorcerer named Imara, the Ultramarines launch an offensive against Delirium to confront the Chaos forces. In a fierce battle, Titus with his squad and Lord Kalga confront Imara, ultimately defeating him and destroying the artifact he wielded. Back aboard the Resilient, Titus is confronted by Quintus, who reveals himself to be Lorandus, a former subordinate of Titus, and was actually the one who told on Titus to the Inquisition that got him sent to the Deathwatch, and warns him to remain vigilant against any signs of corruption. So to all of you who don't know much of Warhammer 40k lore, that's probably a lot of word salad to you, and I really want to emphasize that is an incredibly brief description of the plot here. And to tell you the truth, I'm very far from a lore expert myself. In fact, I had to sit down with Nazma before recording this to make sure I didn't sound like an idiot. And as I was playing the campaign, I kind of just went with the flow of what was happening. But having played the first game and having some wider knowledge of the 40k lore, I was able to keep up with it for the most part. It wasn't until I finished the campaign that I went back and looked up some additional information. Now, even without being a massive 40k guy, I was still able to be totally immersed by this amazing campaign. Now, like I said earlier, if you like the OG Gears of War trilogy, you will most likely enjoy this game. And oh boy, do I like the OG Gears of War trilogy. And oh yes, did I like Space Marine 2's campaign. Slaughtering waves upon waves of Tyranids never stopped being glorious. The boss encounters were challenging at times, and performing finishes on them never got boring. Now, where the campaign did dip just a little bit for me was when there was a shift to make the main threat the Chaos Marines and the Sorcerer Imara, who I don't really think was that great as a main villain. He wasn't bad, just kind of mid. It's not that the 1,000 Suns weren't a threat to play against, it was just that I much more enjoyed the swarming Tyranids as a threat. But for a plot and character development perspective, it makes total sense to have Titus have to face the forces of Chaos again. It should also be mentioned that it did run parallel too much to the first game, where Titus and his squad were fighting an orc invasion until it turns out the Chaos is the puppeteers for a much powerful MacGuffin artifact. In Space Marine 2, you're fighting Tyranids until it turns out to, yep, you guessed it, the Chaos is puppeteering for the same powerful MacGuffin. The biggest kick in the teeth to fans is that it was teased to be a completely different faction, the Necrons that could have been utilized rather than bringing in Chaos, with no real motivation or relevance that the player would be aware of other than throwaway dialogue lines. Remember how I said in the first game Titus was accused of heresy and exiled to the Death Watch because of his unnatural resistance to warp energy magic that Chaos uses? Not touched upon or explained whatsoever in the sequel 2, so it just really highlights how bizarre it was to rely on a twist Chaos threat if they're not going to really explore these elements to the story of Titus. However, here's where I will give them some slack. The last 3 or so missions of the campaign have 2 of the greatest moments I have seen in a video game for some time.
They are everywhere!
Lead me to the slaughter!
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
All in all, there is a lot to be enjoyed with this campaign, and it can be challenging at times, especially on higher difficulties. Titus also makes for a great main character, having to face his actions from the previous game, as well his squad mates showing some good character progression as well. And the ending will leave a tease for more to come, so hopefully some campaign DLC down the line. Maybe something said in the past with his time in the Death Watch to help explain some of the questions we still have about Titus. Alright, real quick before we touch on the other 2 game modes for this game, if you guys are enjoying the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up on it, really would appreciate that. And if you guys enjoy being up to date with everything that's going on in the world of gaming, make sure you subscribe to Gronkin Gaming. That is the gaming podcast we do. We are live there every morning, Monday to Friday, and videos uploaded there pretty consistently as well. Moving right on to the second mode, and that being Operations. The simplest way to explain Operations is they're basically long missions that branch off from the campaign, where instead of playing as Titus, you'll be playing as other Ultramarines. Now, where it gets interesting is the options you have to pick from when selecting a class to play as. So instead of playing as Titus, who throughout the campaign will get access to everything at different stages, in Operations, your class will determine what weapons you can use and your armor defense levels, and also your abilities that you have access to. Playing this mode solo is fine, but where it really shines is in co-op, as you and your friends or randoms you meet in lobby search can decide what class combinations will complement each other best depending on the operation you're selecting. Also, your class and weapons will rank up as you play along to access even more weapons, different variants of those weapons, and more options to customize your Space Marine for each separate class. And we have to mention, on the note of customization, Space Marine 2's armor customization is fucking great. I know I have made comparisons in this video to Gears of War games, but the armor customization here is something more reminiscent of a Bungie era Halo game. One final thing here that I'll add for Operations is, since I've started this review, Saber has already added 1 new operation, so hopefully they can keep the updates rolling out, which will help keep players engaged. And just looking at their roadmap, it does seem they have at least a steady flow of content. Now, the quality of the content is obviously to be determined. However, I am feeling hopeful based off what was here at launch. And I'm also very curious to see how the Horde mode will work when that comes out. The last mode in Space Marine 2 is PvP multiplayer, and it's actually better than I was expecting it to be. Granted, I will admit I wasn't really looking forward to the PvP and cared far more for the campaign and operations mode. However, the PvP is very serviceable. The class system that was used in operations is also used here in PvP, except it does have its own separate progression. And it being 6v6 matches does make for some interesting gameplay that seems to have attracted a dedicated community. I really don't have too much to say about PvP in Space Marine 2, except it's there, and it's better than it should be. The graphics in Space Marine 2 stand out as among the finest on the video game side of the Warhammer 40k series. Players will traverse a variety of settings, from ravaged urban landscapes to treacherous swamps where danger lurks, all while experiencing the dark and heavy ambience that defines the Warhammer 40k universe. Detailing of Titus and his armor and other Space Marines in this game, as well as pretty much any enemy, like the Tyranids look amazing. It all helps to immerse the players in the role of Titus as a formidable warrior navigating in this harsh environment. The game's artistic vision faithfully captures the Warhammer 40k style, merging gothic architecture, desolate terrains, and somber symbols. Saber Interactive has expertly brought to life the foreboding, oppressive settings of worlds plagued by Tyranids, featuring organic textures and haunting landscapes that enhance the terror of the Tyranid onslaught. The soundtrack elevates the game's intensity with its powerful militaristic tones that enhance the high-stakes action. The bolter's gunfire and the growl of a chainsaw and the cries of Tyranids create a visceral combat experience. The voice acting is impressive, I would say, particularly for Titus, whose deep force effectively communicates the gravity of his duty and steadfast loyalty to humanity. Although the game is mostly well crafted, there are a few minor issues, including clipping and sporadic graphical glitches during larger encounters with Tyranid swarms. Nevertheless, these occurrences are infrequent and do not significantly diminish the overall experience at all. As of right now, Space Marine 2 is currently running smoothly on both PC and consoles, thanks to a few updates that were released after the launch. Initially, when the game launched, while not frequently crashing, it did challenge many players' PCs with its demanding performance. However, it has since improved, delivering more consistent frame rates even in the heat of intense battles. Load times are quick and the frame rate stays stable, even with the detailed graphics and high number of enemies on screen. The game's most significant strengths are in its intense combat, faithful Warhammer adaptation, and the incredible design of Tyranid enemies. The progression system in both PvP and operations mode is satisfying, allowing players to grow over time. The narrative is engaging, with Titus' personal journey making him easy for players to like and compelled to see his journey through to the end, with one brutal kill after another, and another, and another, and another, and another. In addition to the flaws I previously mentioned, some of the other ones are that this game's linear structure, which may feel restrictive to some players due to the simplistic level design. Additionally, the segments on the battle barge where players need to interact with NPCs to advance the storyline can also be seen as a drawback. Personally, I didn't have an issue with those things, but I can understand why some players will. Space Marine 2 stands out for its intense focus on the individual experience of a Space Marine, capturing the power and heroism of a single warrior in the face of overwhelming odds. The game's melee and ranged combat dynamics help elevate it above the previous game. While it shares similarities with other action games, mostly Gears of War, its unique lore and emphasis on the Warhammer 40k universe give it a distinct identity that not only Warhammer fans, but just general video game fans can appreciate. Its unique lore and emphasis on the Warhammer 40k universe give it a distinct identity that you do not have to be a die-hard Warhammer fan to appreciate. Space Marine 2 is a powerful and immersive sequel that builds on the strengths of the original while bringing the grim world of 40k universe to life. It's a must-play for fans of action games and the Warhammer franchise, offering intense combat, a compelling narrative, high-stakes battles against relentless enemies. Now, whether you're a lifelong Warhammer fan or new to the universe, Space Marine 2 delivers an experience that's equal parts thrilling and horrifying, making it one of the standout action games of not just the year, but in many years. And I do mean this as the highest form of compliment. This game feels like it came from the Xbox 360, PS3 era. This game is just so fucking raw. Space Marine puts so much spotlight on the things that really got me into gaming, and the best part is you don't need to be a Warhammer 40k fan to enjoy this game. However, even if you're not a massive Warhammer fan, I can almost guarantee that by the end of Space Marine 2, you will have pledged eternal service to the Emperor, and you will rally on your battle brothers for the glory of the Imperium in the name of Guilliman. Courage and honor.
Courage and honor!
Company dismissed.
Thank you so very much for checking out this video. I really do appreciate it. Again, I know we're a little bit late, but with recent traveling, I really just wanted to sit down and just smash out this game and not turn it off. So I really do appreciate you all for checking this one out. Thank you. If you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and if you really enjoy the content, maybe consider becoming a channel member, as it does help create these types of videos. Again, thank you so very much, and I'll see you all in the next one.